if you're working with a host, it's a relationship, right? And with the client, it's like this kind of triangle relationship where everybody needs to be on the same page, right?
The major differentiator in hosting companies is not just the technology that underlines the infrastructure, but it's the actual way in which they communicate with their customers.
Again, if we're helping them succeed, why would they go anywhere else for the host or the agency? So the quicker we can get it back online, the quicker we can say, all right, here's what happened. Here's the postmortem. Here's what we're going to do to make sure it never happens again.
When you have a strong relationship, you can weather those storms in a way that you can't if you're just relying on someone to communicate to you through a help desk ticket or something like that. Welcome to Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. I am your host, Jesse Friedman. Before we dive in, remember to check out impressive.host. It's where you can comment on episodes, ask follow-up questions, and submit questions for upcoming guests. You'll also find all our links to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen. With me today is a friend and a colleague in the community, Brad Williams, founder and partner of WebDevStudios. Brad, you and I have known each other for a long time. We haven't had a chance to hang out recently. I think COVID threw a wrench into a lot of that stuff, but we used to see each other at WordCamps and such all the time. How you been?
I've been well, Jesse. Yeah, thanks for having me. It has been a minute. Like I always, it's like the before times, and it gets a little fuzzy when I start thinking about when was it the last time we saw each other. But yeah, we're kind of old school in the space, aren't we? We've been around for a few years, I guess.
I think we have a few stories to tell too, but maybe we save them for.
Maybe not. Yeah. We'll see.
I don't know. It depends. But yeah, so how's life? What are you working on? And what's going on at WebDev?
Yeah, life's great, man. Living the dream, right? Running my business, working remote, beautiful family, great, living in a great spot. The sun's out today. It's almost summer. I mean, running a business can be challenging, right? And there's good days and bad days, but at the end of the day, if you take a step back and just, I'm really thankful and lucky and fortunate that I'm at where I'm at. I've been building amazing WordPress solutions, working in the open source community and world, running WebDevStudios for over 17 years now. So it sounds even weird kind of saying that out loud because it's so long. Like I'm almost like our company's almost an adult, like it's, but to be doing this day in and day out and not only successfully, but just, just see the growth of the company, the growth of WordPress, the growth of the community, all the companies, I should say, that are out there from, starting back when a lot of us were just doing this for fun, blogging, kind of sharing knowledge to like now many of us are still in this industry, running businesses, working in really high profile positions at companies. And it's been fun to be a part of it. And I'm still really excited to be here, man. So yeah, it's
awesome.
going well.
That's great. Yeah, it is hard to think about the fact that it's been 17 years for you. I've been in Automatic for 11 years now. I've been working on WordPress for 20 plus years. It's hard.
It's getting old, man. We just had the 22nd birthday, and I'm like, I remember celebrating the 10th birthday like the other day, and we had a cake. It was one of the nerdiest things I've ever done. Yeah. Probably in my professional career was saying "Happy Birthday" to WordPress with a group of nerds in Philadelphia. So around a birthday cake, and but it's a great memory. So I pulled up that picture, and then now we're at 22nd anniversary. It's time flies when you're having fun. I guess that's true, right?
I have a notebook somewhere with a 10th anniversary sticker on it. And I can remember where I was when I got that. And it's 12 years ago. It's, wow. It slips by, huh? In the last 5 to 6, 7 years, it's all kind of blended together. How did it fare through the COVID times? How was an agency life, dealing with the fact that, we were in a pandemic and it seemed like everyone was going on and resorting to building websites online, which might have been good, but did that also create some competition for you too? Like, were there freelancers and web designers coming out of the woodwork?
Yeah, good question, right? It's kind of a weird time, I think, for everybody in different ways. And especially running a business is a weird time. I mean, in some ways we were very well positioned for it. We were a remote company already. We had been since like 2010, back when it was weird. And people asked us about that all the time to nowadays when it's like really common and just everyone's aware of what it was. But, so yeah, it's definitely, it's changed a bit. So, we got through it, and fortunately, like we really leaned into our relationships, and not just client relationships, of course, right? We're agency, we're client services, but our hosting relationships, our product relationships. Like, and I felt like all of us, because nobody really knew what exactly was going on and what the next month, 6 months, 12, forget 12 months, those plans, like I didn't even know what was going to happen the next week, right? So I felt like we were all very close in the WordPress community. And so we kind of, in some way, banded together and just kind of tightened those relationships and tried to help each other out as much as we could and kept online events going and kept helping each other in the back channels. So it was definitely weird. But luckily our core clients really, kept us, busy. It got, obviously new business wasn't really walking on the door, but our current clients were, held strong. And I'm really thankful for that. And I attribute it to my team and the relationships that we have built over the years that they still had initiatives. And like you said, in many ways, there were more initiatives because everybody was forced to be online, right? So now everything got accelerated. So yeah, then there was that kind of COVID spike of work, right? That just kind of came in the door. Then there was the great resignation where everyone just started going for higher paid jobs. I mean, it's just been a roller coaster
Yeah,
honestly the last 4 or 5
sure.
years. Like, and when you think you got it figured out, and all right, we got past that next hurdle, there's another hurdle, right? And at this point, I feel like as an agency owner, I'm just like, bring it on. You know what I mean? Like we're still here and we're still charging. And like at this point, it doesn't even matter because we've seen so many things that you could never plan for. And we're
Right.
still here and we're still doing amazing stuff. You know what I mean? So, it's like Lieutenant Dan, like in the big storm, like, bring it on. Like maybe I shouldn't do that comment about it, but you know what I mean? Like it's just, at some point you gotta be like, all right, it we're gonna get through it. Whatever else comes around the corner that we
Yeah.
can't plan for and expect, we're gonna get through it. Right. So but yeah, it was an interesting time and not one I'd like to kind of do over, but thankfully we got through it okay.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, you mentioned about building relationships. I would imagine that extends uh, internally as well, right? So it's building relationships with your clients, but it's also having a relationship with your colleagues and your employees as well,
Right.
and strengthening those things. But help me understand. So, what is it like for you as the lead of a large, very successful agency, and the relationships that you have with partners or clients? Are you talking to everyone? Does everybody know who you are? Do you have a small segment of flagship partners that you have a relationship with? And then also, how does that work? Like, do you have technical account managers and account managers? Like, how's it working building those relationships with clients?
Yeah, I mean, great question because it is relationships, right? And honestly, that's like at the end of the day, we're all here to have build a company. We want to be successful. We want to, be able to pay our employees and them to have very successful lives. And we need to make money, right? Like we're here to make money at the end of the day. And a lot of times, we
Right.
kind of beat around it, but that's what we're here to do, right? Is make money, and that's how we can make our team successful and live, the lives we want to live. So, but it
Sometimes
is
that's an important reminder, especially in the open source community, right? Like, it's okay to be profit driven. It's okay to be focused on making money,
it is,
as long
and
as it's not like impeding on your, I think, core ethos of
exactly, and there's a
building.
balance,
Right.
I think Automatic's a very good example of a company that contributes so much to the project, right? And certainly not every hour, minute, hundreds of hours are gonna equal $1 or $10 back into the company, but at the end of the day, growing WordPress as a whole benefits all of us, including Automatic, right? Including WordPress.com, including everybody that has their hands in WordPress in any capacity. So yeah, side note, but in terms of like my involvement in my team and stuff, I'm very close to our clients, right? Like we're not a large agency per se, but we're not small either. And we've ebbed and flowed over the years, but we've never been to the point where we're big enough where I don't want to have some type of a relationship with the client. Now it might not be where we're talking every day, but I like to have, monthly check-ins with many of our clients. I like to pop into team calls every once in a while and just kind of be a fly on the wall, but they know I'm there, and just being there and knowing that they have my attention, it means something, and there's
Sure.
agencies that are much bigger than us where they're not going to get that level of attention. So I think it's important at our size when we are competing with larger agencies that that's one of those things that can help us stand out, right? That kind of more personal, hey, here's Brad, the owner, like he's invested in the call or our project, not just from the sales standpoint, but here we are 6 months later and he's checking in. And I know there's ways that I could be better about that. And I'm sure all of us want to connect more. And it's, there's only so many hours in the day, but it's definitely something I take to heart because and I really appreciate my team. Like it's all about relationships. If we have good
Right.
relationships with our partners, our clients, or whoever we're working with, when there's challenges or problems, and there will be, absolutely there will be, but when they are much smaller. There's no longer a mountain, right? It's a hill you got to work because you have a tight relationship. All right, there's a problem, something happened, let's figure it out together and then let's figure out how to make sure it never happens again, right? So it just makes those situations that could be much much worse less worse, right? And it doesn't mean they're not bad, and doesn't mean you want to avoid them at all costs, but they're going to happen. And just having those relationships are going to go so far. They know you're out there to be
Oh
their
yeah.
advocate to help them succeed, right? So that's what we try to project within our company.
Absolutely. I mean, I can attest to that as someone who's worked in partnerships for a very long time that, mistakes are going to happen, problems are going to arise, but when you have a strong relationship, you can weather those storms in a way that you can't if you're just relying on someone to communicate to you through a help desk ticket or something like that.
Yeah.
Having the ability to just formulate that relationship and strengthen it is usually important. So, how does that extend to hosting companies? Do you have a relationship with your hosting companies, or do you see them as a vendor that you just sign up for through a web interface and that's it?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a partner, right? Like the host is an integral partner in what we do, and I made a decision early on with my partners at the time. We didn't want to be a host. We didn't want to be. That wasn't our core competency, right? And could we have
Yep.
brought people in and made it? Yes, we could have, but it just wasn't something we were very passionate about. And just to be blunt, it just never really interested me. So I always was like, we need to work with reputable hosts that it can be good partners to us and our clients, and then we can bring them in and recommend them. And it 100% is a partnership because if you're working with a host, it's a relationship, right? And with the client, it's like this kind of triangle relationship where everybody needs to be on the same page, right? And we all need to work together towards the success of the client. Because if the client's succeeding, then the agency and the host are good to go, right? Why would they ever go anywhere else if the client's like killing it, right? So it's really about focusing on them, we're helping them however we can, depending on how we can. But having those tight relationships go so far because we have, we're in partnership agency partner programs with most of the WordPress managed hosts that people are familiar with. We have monthly check-ins with these hosts. We go to feature demos, internal feature demos, so we really understand like what they can offer us and our clients, either tools for my developers or features for our clients that we can bring to them and not only be thought leaders, but also maybe drum up some more work, because we're in the business to make money, right? So, but also being thought leaders, right? Hey, you didn't even think about this, but this host rolled out this awesome search application. You're already paying for it. You want to check it out? Let's use it. So that relationship goes so far with the host. I get nervous if I always say we're hosting agnostic because we're an agency, right? So we have to be in some capacity. But if we're working with a host that we don't have a direct relationship with, I do get nervous because we don't have those back channels. And we're just going to some generic support ticket system where they come to us, say, hey, have you like deactivated all of your plugins? It's like, okay, that's like telling an advanced developer, have you rebooted your computer? We've rebooted the computer. All right. Like we're way past that stage if we're coming to you for support. So those back channels can just really help accelerate it. And at the end of the day, it's all to help the client succeed. Right. So that's why I just absolutely love our
I know
relationship.
that pain so well. Like you get on the phone with someone and you want to somehow verify that you know what you're talking about, so you can bypass the
Right.
scripted. Did you
Yeah.
do this? Did you do that
Look,
thing?
I know you're doing
Um,
your job and you have to ask these
yeah,
questions. Let me just
right. But like, let me
get
tell you
all of
about
that.
myself. Like, I don't want to have to boast, but like, I run a tech company, or I do
Yeah.
this, or like I know how to reset a router. Yeah. So what does that actually look like? So help me understand like the actual nuances of it.
Mhm.
You sign up with a hosting company. What is it that you expect? Do you expect a one-to-one relationship with a singular person? Do you expect a higher tier of support, and
Mhm.
it could be anybody who's on the other end of that line? Like, how does that actually shape or come to shape?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good question because every partnership is a little bit different, right? Right, it's not a cookie cutter playbook that everyone's falling into a T. They all do it a little bit differently. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think having that point person, like you said, is helpful, right? Having that who is my partnership, you know, relationship manager, the person that if I have a question, whether it's about a service or a client's disgruntled, or hey, I got a new sales lead, who's the person I can go to in the back channel that they're not going to have all the answers, but they can direct
Right.
me to the right people or bring in the right people, right? So that's super helpful because again, we want to not we're when leads come in the door or even clients come to us and ask for hosting recommendations, we really boast the fact that we're in part of our programs that we have like gold level status or VIP level status with certain hosts, right? So because it benefits them. And we talk about exactly what we're talking about here, that partnership and how it's ultimately benefits them. If they're having a problem with whatever on the website, who do I go to? Come to your agency. We work with the host. We can go to the back channel if we need to, but generally speaking, we won't need to. And if we do, we'll go to the back channel, right? So we use that in our sales tools as well because we want them to work with the hosts that we work with. So it's having that tight relationship, doing sales, right? Like we've had so many situations we brought on a hosting partner during our pitch while they're also pitching their services. But then you can imagine as a client on one side of the table and then a host and an agency, locked in step with their plan of how they're going to help this client succeed on the other side of the table, and two distinct companies, mind you, right? Like that right there, just the look from the other side of the table says something. It speaks volumes, right? Versus
So
just an
this is
agency
you and the
sitting there.
host basically co-selling and
Absolutely.
working
And we've had a
together to
lot
sell
of
this
success
customer.
with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we're showing a unified front from day one, right? And we say,
Right.
hey, we're
Right.
not the host. They're the host. And that's all they do. And they're not the developers. We are. And that's all we do, right? And we're here to just, absolutely, knock your project out of the park. So you can imagine from a sales standpoint, like that is, especially when you start getting those more enterprise level projects, when we're up against platforms like Adobe, AME, Experience Manager, that is this massive conglomerate that has it's all in one big thing. We have to go in unified, right? We can't
Yeah.
go in separate. We have to go in unified and sell them on WordPress as the solution. And these two companies are the ones that are going to get you there. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting. What's funny is we've interviewed on this podcast a few different hosting companies, and they do approach support from a very different. They all seem to kind of go at it differently. But it has been uncovered in this podcast that like support is uh, significantly more important than I think that a lot of people put an emphasis on. And it's not just for end customers; it is obviously for agencies. And so, I don't mean to say that like it was a misnomer that people thought like you didn't need to provide good support, but I think what we've uncovered here is that the major differentiator in hosting companies is not just the technology that underlines the infrastructure, but it's the actual way in which they communicate with their customers. I mean, we interviewed Tom from Convesio. He has Slack channels for most of his clients, and so they
mhm,
can jump in and have much more direct interactions with them as a hosting
awesome.
company. Bluehost Cloud uses jumps you to tier 3 phone support. So you can pick up the phone 24/7 and you bypass tier 1 and tier 2 and you go right to tier
Mhm,
3, which is individuals who know how to actually build WordPress websites more than just, typical hosting. So it kind of gets past that, the other thing that we
mhm.
were talking about, trying to prove out that you know what you're doing. And so it seems to be a very common thread that hosting companies need to find a way to differentiate themselves from service. How do you shop for that? Like, how do you, as an agency, if you were evaluating a new hosting company,
Mhm.
how would you uncover the type of support they're going to provide and whether or not they would go into those co-selling opportunities with you?
Yeah, honestly, it's just kind of understanding their program. And we do talk about support because you're right. That is a huge part of that solution. We want the website to be up and fast, right? But again, there's going to be problems. It's guaranteed. It's technology, right? So you have to understand what the support is. Is there an SLA here or not, right? Like, what is that level of support? If the site goes down, what is the host's responsibility based on the plan you're on to, jump and start figuring out what's going on and how quickly they have to have it fixed. So, like really understand that. But honestly, we're just very direct about it. Like we just want to understand. And at the end of the day, the hosts that really understand what they're doing, like Tom and others, like they know what they're doing, right? Because both sides are doing by doing that, you want to make sure you're vetting agencies and you're not just letting anybody in, right? But when you have the ones that know what they're doing, and they're coming to the host and saying, "Hey, we do have a situation here." Most likely, it's probably going to be a good client for both, right? It's probably going to be maybe even on the larger side. But then the quicker you get to that solution, the quicker you get to keeping that client happy, right? And you're going to be able to get there quick if you're not saying, "Hey, did you deactivate all the plugins?" And like yes, this is we've hosted websites for Microsoft and the NBA. Like we've done all of that. Trust me. Like get me to tier 3, right? So
Right, right,
'cause if
right.
we're coming to them for support, like there's something seriously going on that we have tried everything on our side, and is absolutely something on the host side that we need some help with. So you need to
And
vet
it
the
probably
agencies,
means
of
there's some
course.
urgency at that moment.
Yeah, and then it's doing right by the client. Ultimately, you want to keep them on the host. You want to keep them happy. Again, if we're helping them succeed, why would they go anywhere else for the host or the agency? So the quicker we can get it back online, the quicker we can say, all right, here's what happened. Here's the post mortem. Here's what we're going to do to make sure it never happens again. The quicker I'm be like, all right, yep, it happened. Things happen. The way they've responded is exactly why I hired these two companies. They got it back up within minutes. And no harm, no foul, away we go. And they're doing a post-mortem. So I'm confident that we're going to get to the bottom of that. So like that is what gives them the confidence of that's why I'm hired, these companies. And so, again, that the relationships, man, I'll always go back to it because it is so important, across everything we're doing, but certainly in the hosting in what agency space, we have to work together, you know?
Sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So when you're evaluating a new project, you have, large flagship partners, maybe with a brand name that has a higher expectation versus, I don't know what level of client you take on, but I'm sure there's a differentiation between these big flagship ones
Yep.
and smaller customers. How do you start to evaluate the needs of those customers, and how much are you, like thinking about, I'm going to present this hosting company and these choices, or are you just kind of giving them, like, are you giving them options about hosting companies, or are you making a recommendation for them and selling them on that?
It kind of depends. It really depends on the client, the relationship, the lead, if it's a new lead walking the door and what they're looking for. Generally, we will offer like to present two options. Because with anything, I think it's always good to get some counterpoints, right? Just to, even if you know the first one was amazing, never hurts to hear somebody else, right? Just to see if maybe they brought some things you hadn't thought about, right? So, or whatever. So, but sometimes they're like, look, just give us, who we feel would be best. We just want to talk to someone, and again, we'll facilitate those conversations. And I always tell the client, we're there, initially to advocate for you. We're on your side of the table. I talk about sides of the table. We're on the client side to say, all right, host, we have a relationship, right? But we're here with the client to help them make sure we're getting right size for what they need, getting set up for success and potential growth. The host really understands what they need. It is a project that might get bursts of unknown traffic, things going viral. Is it something that's predictable traffic? Is it just massive traffic? Or, all those questions and
Right.
data that we need to look at. But we do want to work with the host ahead of that too. And so we want to, again, with that partnership relationship, set the host up for success too, right? So we'll usually pregame that call and say, well, obviously this is with client permission. We're not, the NDAs, we make sure everything's above board. But we're sharing the analytics, we're sharing some of their needs and concerns. Generally, if someone's walking the door, they have something going on and they're not happy in many cases. And they're like, all right, we need a rebuild, we want to host somewhere else, whatever. So what's happening? What are the concerns? Slow response times, no matter what they do, it seems like we're on shared hosting. It just, we can't pass core web vitals, whatever. But so it's back channeling with the host ahead of that call to pregame, and then making sure they're bringing the best solutions um,
Yeah.
for that client.
S-
So they're tailored, right? Like, don't just, what's your standard package? What should they have based on everything we've given you?
Right. Right. Okay. And so it's fair to say then, you have a variety of hosting companies that you're working with then through multiple clients. Do clients come on sometimes and say, hey, we're really in love with our host. We don't want to change hosts, but we want to hire you? And do you have a problem with that? Do you have to put that host through the paces, or do you say, okay, you brought the host, it's your responsibility now?
Generally, what we will take that on. The only time I would say the kind of disclaimer around that is that we'll have some clients or leads, I should say, walk in the door and they're sitting on like AWS. And I'm like, okay, well, who's managing that? Nobody. Well, who set it up? Well, the marketing firm that built the site. I'm like, whose account is it? Well, we're not really sure. Okay, so
Yeah, right.
while we want to help you, we're not going to work on that platform, right? So we will help you, but we need to be talking about where we should put this new setup, right? On a proper managed host, because you don't have sysadmins, and I'm sure most likely you probably don't want to hire them. So
Right.
let's talk about a good managed platform for you, and they'll do all that work, right? So, and we do see that from time to time, right? Somebody just stands up a AWS, whatever instance, gets WordPress running, zero anything else, no caching, nothing, and say, here you go, looks great. Terrible performance, no updates happening, So,
Right.
so we wouldn't want to work on that. We'd want to get them off to a different platform where they should be, right? So I wouldn't say no,
Gotcha.
but like back to my original statement of like, if it's one we haven't worked with, we'll just be a little more cautious. We'll look into it. But we've had to work with some hosts and still do every once in a while that just feel like they're pretty far behind, right? They don't have the tools. And we'll work with the client and try to
Yeah.
suggest in a very professional way that they might want to look at options. But some clients are just, they're happy with where they're at. And okay, that's your decision.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but back when I was never running an agency like yours, but I used to do freelance work, and I remember the problem that I would always run into is no matter whose responsibility it was, because I was the point of contact with the client, it always
Mhm.
fell on my shoulders. So I would imagine it's still probably the same situation. Is that, like, even if it's the completely, you didn't write bad code,
Yeah.
you didn't forget to update something, the host failed at something, they're probably still looking at you and saying what
Yeah.
happened, right, and pointing the finger at you. How do you manage that? How do you, keep that relationship? As we talked about relationships being so important. How do you do that without running into issues of pointing fingers and saying it's their responsibility, it's not our problem, that
Mhm.
kind of thing?
It's funny because that you're 100% right. something goes out, no matter how much you generally will inform a client, they'll most likely come to the agency. And if nothing else, that speaks that you have a good relationship, right? They need help, they're in trouble, they're coming to you. Okay, that's a good thing, right? So we used to, like, when we were younger and still trying to figure this, and honestly, we're still trying to figure it out. But when we were younger, still trying to figure it out, it was kind of like that, right? Where they'd come to us, and it was very much kind of a blame game with the host, and we didn't have relationships with hosts back then, right? We didn't. It was just our ticket systems, and the host is pointing at WordPress, and we're pointing at the host, and it just, and the client's just mad at everybody, right? So we learned that's not the way to work. And that's when we started leaning more into these relationships. Like, look, we need to get tighter relationships with hosts and platforms we truly understand inside and out, so that it isn't a finger pointing situation. The clients, they're going to come to us, but we shouldn't go to the host and start pointing fingers. We should be able to work with the host, figure it out, go back to the client, say, hey, we work together. It's all good. Right. So again, going back to getting those partnerships, and, just thinking about one other piece of advice I give companies, something we've done over the years, is to really define that, right? Because the big question, well, what happens at 2 a.m? My site goes down. That's the question everybody asks, right? And I'm like, well, that's a good question, because I'm not here to answer the phone, right? I don't want to be a host, remember? So what we like to do with our clients is set up in case of emergency, break glass PDF. It's a 1-page doc, and it outlines exactly what to do and where to go. And 90% of it has come to us, right? But it's basically the holidays, the overnight sessions where we're not in the office. Those are where we make it very clear. You go right to the host, you CC this email address if it's an email, or you make sure you add us if you can. And you tell them exactly what's going on. I was like, if we didn't push code at 2 a.m, because we're not going to, 99.9% of the chance there's something going on with the host. They can kick the server, do whatever, and get it back online, right? And as long as we're CC'd, we'll see it as soon as we get in and figure out what went on. So, it doesn't mean they're always going to read it, but we want to make sure at any point we can say, it's right here. We've delivered this. We've asked you to favorite and star it. And that way it's really clear. And honestly, most clients, when you really walk them through that process and they have one clear, concise document, they're pretty good with that, right? So, it's
I think that's actually rather brilliant. I mean, there's something in there that is, just, oh man, it's so smart, because what you're doing is psychologically, you're setting the stage, saying, we are the agency. We're going to take on this responsibility. We're here for you 99% of the time, but there are going to be times when we're not going to be there, and you're going to need to go directly to the person who is actually responsible. And so while, yes, we're going to manage that for you, and we're going to take on the responsibility of handling the complex pieces of the puzzle, which is why you're going with us. At the same time, we're not actually the ones doing all this work. Right. We're kind of just managing it on your behalf. And so subtly you're saying to them, like, hey, don't forget that there's this whole other company that you've hired, and they're doing the work.
We tried to be that 24/7 for years. I tried different systems of automation, using automated text messages, and there's great systems out there that can absolutely do this, right? You email it, it calls you, text, there's escalation, and they're not relatively inexpensive. But finally I just came down and I'm like, we're trying to be something we're not, right? It's more about just educating, and then really getting to the root of what their question is. It's not, hey, can I call you at 2 a.m. in the morning? It's like, hey, what do I do if it's 2 a.m. in the morning? And because we used to say, wait, if you want one of my team members around 24/7, we could figure that out. It's not going to be cheap. And as soon as you start laying out pricing, you're like, oh, we don't really want that. I'm like, right, because you're already paying for this at the host level, right? So the host
exactly.
24/7. They pretty much have to be to make it as a host in this world, right? So
sure,
again, just it's like educating and just making sure it's like the one place you keep pointing. If there's ever a problem, this is where you go, right? And then honestly, it's a good process. It's worked well for us.
Yeah. Okay. One more question before we end this episode, but I'm curious, when you're thinking about the way in which your company operates in its workflows, I'm sure you're using a bunch of different tools. I'm sure you're, doing a variety of things to manage these WordPress instances across different hosts. But, you touched on the fact that if they're on something like an AWS, it's unmanaged and nobody's touching it, you want to move them to a managed WordPress host. Mm-hmm. We've had a whole episode about this. We brought Jess Frick on from Pressable, and we asked her, pun intended, what the frick is WordPress, managed WordPress hosting? You know what I mean? But I want to ask you that, when you think about managed WordPress hosting, what is it that you're actually thinking you're getting? What is your core assumptions there?
Yeah. Yeah. So core assumptions, from our standpoint, in my standpoint, our agency is managed host. One, it's a host that's really been tailored. The entire architecture and stack of the host has been tailored specifically for WordPress, right? So really specifically for that platform, and that can mean a lot of different things under the hood, but it knows how to work with WordPress and knows the best possible caching layers and structure that work well with how WordPress works. So but want to make sure they can talk the talk and walk the walk when it comes to WordPress. If they say they're a managed WordPress host, right? If you're just a host and you're not really bragging about it being managed WordPress, then I probably wouldn't have that kind of those expectations. But and making sure their team understands WordPress, because again,
Right.
how many if you work with a host that doesn't really get WordPress and they just start to blame the platform, it's just a blogging tool. Like, all right, guy, it's 2025, it's not a blogging tool. So like they need to be knowledgeable about WordPress and what it can do, and what custom post types are and like their support, we go back to support and how important it is. So I expect very tailored support, not kind of generic web support, very tailored to WordPress. All those things really add up.
Yeah.
And I tell the clients, I'm like, unless you want to have a staff of like sysadmins that are sitting here just architecting AWS all day long and optimizing and like, you don't, but that's what they're doing all day long. And their staff are hundreds of people generally. Right. So let them do that. You spend a little bit more, but at the end of the day, like the amount that you're saving versus if you were just to hire one sysadmin to do that type of work is, it's a lot. It's a lot, to say it lightly, right?
Sure.
And then it's built for like the growth and the success that everybody wants online, right? Everybody wants a website that's going to grow in some way. Whatever your goals online is, you most likely want it to grow. And that could mean a lot of different things. It doesn't just mean sales, but so you also need a platform that has a very clear path to scale up, right? Is it a
Yeah.
burst? Can it handle burst traffic or not? Is it just kind of a progression of scaling up? Do I get priced out at some point? Like at what point does that price become call us, call us? Like, what point does that price hit call us? Because I may not be ready for that price yet. So just kind of understanding, like, at what point may you growing out of some host may not be the worst thing, because it means there's probably a lot of success. And there are certainly levels where you do need to start upgrading to a higher tier enterprise level host. But understanding that early on for those good metrics to make sure you're not kind of putting yourself in a corner that's going to hurt your growth if it's actually happening, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's really just to summarize it all. It's all about being focused on WordPress, right? From
Right.
top down within that company and bottom up. So that you see it in everything you do when you interact with hosts that specialize in WordPress. And it's such a difference when you work with hosts that don't.
I'm loving this because it's such perfect alignment with what I'm working on at WP Cloud. I mean, everything that we're doing is it's a WordPress first cloud platform built from the ground up specifically for WordPress. You've mentioned before that, you want these, the deep understanding of caching layers and other things and all this, the way in which WordPress works. And the reason that we do a lot of the things that we do is because we are able to put up these guardrails because we know it's WordPress.
Mhm.
And because of that, we're able to make decisions that will help the whole overarching platform perform faster and be more secure. Whereas when you go with a more universal infrastructure, you have to compensate for all these different, angles and different ways in which you can launch something. And so,
I don't
yeah,
miss
so like,
panel. I don't miss like what was there's another one. I don't miss those tools, and they're great for what they were, and they're still great for many cases. But I like a very tailored dashboard for WordPress. Like I like
that's
a
exactly right.
dashboard that's set for me to work with the WordPress tools and get in the database. And you could do all that and using cPanel, but it's just the generic cPanel that everybody
But it's
uses,
nice
right?
to have your list of plugins, your
Yeah.
themes, exactly how things are operating, what versions you're on.
It's version checking, absolutely. It's telling me, "Hey,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
six behind," like, it already knows WordPress is out of date when I log in. So, like, and
Yeah,
that's at the
yeah.
host level, so it's all I love
Right,
those
right.
tools.
Very cool. Well, this is a great opportunity to take a break here. We're at 30 minutes, and I know that my producer, John, is always on me to get
Mhm.
short episodes that are consumable in this 2025 format where everybody wants everything quick. So let's take a break, and we'll come back for our second episode with Brad. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. Do you have a follow-up question for today's guest, thought or comment on anything we talked about, a future guest suggestion, a hosting horror story? What do you think makes great WordPress hosting? All your comments shape this show. Drop them on impressive.host. We also appreciate you following us on social media and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Finally, Do check out our list of open source projects that need support at impressive.host. Whether it's code, community, or cache, you can make a difference. See you next time.